Hi everyone. If you're like me, you're at the tail end of studying for 2 years to be a counselor, and now it's time to take the dreaded CPCE or the NCE exams. And one of the things that I know was something on my mind, and I would imagine it's something on your mind, is just how do you keep all of the theorists' names and be able to remember what it is that they do. And for me, I'm not particularly good at remembering the names and what they do. And so I use mnemonics. And so what I would recommend you do is something that I did, which is identify all of the people that you need and then figure out a mnemonic. And I did that for 60. So 60 mnemonics for the different folks that are part of our world. So I'll give you a couple of examples now with the idea that it is going to be something that you're going to need to come up with mnemonics of your own. My mnemonics are not going to work for you. So I'll give you an example. It is a little bit of a shocking example, so I apologize in advance. Alfred Adler, Adlerian therapies, is a step systematic training for effective parenting. And he did something called mirroring and twinning and spitting in one soup and asking as if. So Adlerian therapy can in fact be individual therapy. It can be group therapy as well. So how do I remember that? Well, the way that I started to remember it was Alfred Adler was about inferiority and superiority. He was determined that your birth rate, where you were in the order in your family, was extremely important. It is ironic to me that Alfred Adler thought so much of this because Alfred Adler's brother, older brother, is somebody that we don't study at all, and he did nothing meaningful. So the younger brother, although that is not supposed to be a superior place, Alfred Adler, everybody knows, but in fact he was the younger brother. So he did this birth rate. And because of all of these things, I thought of my younger brother, and when he was younger, I thought he was a bit of an asshole. And so the way that I remember Alfred Adler is an asshole because he was the younger brother and he did the birth rate order of inferiority and superiority. And from there, I remember, Alfred Adler, he was mirroring and twinning and spitting in one soup and acting as if. So that's kind of the way that I remember. That is my mnemonic. Let me give you a couple more to think about. And again, you're going to find a mnemonic on your own. No more swear words, I promise. So Floyd Henry Allport was social psychology and group work. And he wrote a textbook, Social Psychology, and he said social facilitation says group work makes learning easier. Now, is group work making learning easier? Maybe. I think that has to do with more than just being in a group. But maybe that's also because I was always the person who was doing everything in the group. So that might also be on me. And he studied attitude. So I was like, well, how do I remember? Because there's a Gordon Allport and there's a Floyd Henry Allport. And the way that I remember it is all aport, because it sounds like all aboard, which is what they used to say in the old Westerns. And it means that everybody's on board with group work. So that's just an example. I'll give you one more because, again, these are very individual examples. So Carolyn Atneve and Virginia Axline did things with social work and did things with children. So Virginia Axline is children-centered, what we now know as play therapy, but when it was first being identified, it was just called children-centered play therapy. And it's both directive and non-directive children's play therapy. It's a methodology. It's not a theory of counseling. And a lot of the later folks didn't do theories of counseling. They were just part of the fourth force, and they did a way to deal with it. And the way that I remember it, again, just for me, is children shouldn't play with X's because it is Virginia X line. So those are the kind of things that that I use to remember. So if you asked me even now who Stanley Coopersmith was, I can tell you that Stanley Coopersmith was self-esteem, and there's a mnemonic around that. So what I would recommend to you is develop mnemonics when you're trying to remember the 60 plus names that you need to know in order to do well on the CPCE and the NCE exam. I'm rooting for you.